But anyway, thanks Tracy, and thanks to the other participants and all our people that are listening to our presentation. And thank you for this opportunity for my presentation as a passion behind loving water and love my water. The connection of water to me as a human and my family and everybody that we survive on this Mother Earth. Based on that, Leweton is an organization that it's been funded by the New Zealand ICOM, and it's been strengthening the idea of preserving the culture. And one of them is the water music, and the performance and entertainment that we present. Based on that, water music reflect and weave a lot of story behind. And it's really hard to break it down into pieces, mother of my language, and English and French, people who can understand and grab. But in reflection of water, the ladies are stand west in the water. Like women, I have to acknowledge that women are really valuable. Our Mother Earth carries the life of the universe, as well as our mother, human mother, carries the life of a human. From a day one that we produce life in a human life as women, as well as our Mother Earth, that's seated on the water and reflect the source of life that can be produced to contribute in the life that transform on the land and on the water, or inside land and inside the water. So our storytelling becomes with our traditional understanding of our connection with water and what we eat and what we drink. And water is a big measure in everything we can say about life of a human and also the life of a nature and creatures. And the water is always the measure between all these lives, and it produces lots of stories as we see in the water or listen to the water. And the pattern of the water that weaves through the land, and it's the same pattern that weaves through the ocean. And that's why reflecting on that by understanding this in our traditional languages, it's a short form of understanding that when we try to explain in other languages, it takes us like a long story. But something that we mention in our mother tongue languages, it has a lot of meaning. Anything that you say water in there, like water is life, water is the source of life, it means a long story in that by understanding to take that word back into our mother tongue language. Water is, in a language we said means, ways means it protect and save our life, and it shapes the life and it measures the life. And that's the short word of a measure that water measures our life. And it's the same measure that measures our creatures and our nature. And that's why people, to understand how we measure our tide table of the tides in the water. And it's the same measurement that measures the human as well when we understand this in our language. And this is what our Mother Nature talks a lot by using the form of water and also the form of how the natures are growing. And that reflects our eyes as a human to understand and honor and protect as well, to understand that meaning of value. Above all this, and like I said before, water is the measure of all this before anything else on earth. And water becomes a measure. Like fire and water forms the earth. And that's the understanding back in the reflection of how the earth was formed. Like I said before, it just reflects in our food, how we prepare our food, how we measure the food. I've been water inside the food, and it measures the water that we drink and the measure that comes through our eyes to the water. And that's why we said the pattern of the water, it's just mentioning just the running, the space of the wave, the timetable of the weather pattern. Water always reads the biggest picture before anything that we can say through our eyes or our mind. But water always tell us that story. So that's why the sounds become the pattern of the voice through the water. So that's where the water music comes in. Because in our language, we call water music is this oitung, oitung, and ndumbe. So it's the sound of the two things that makes the music. And music becomes like telling our story through music by drumming the water. So the main work that I put myself to connect to water is because I look at the value of water, and the work that I'm doing to use the water music or the ladies drumming water music as a platform of weaving that story. I believe in visual is the right thing to use, because people are turning away. Like I said before, the movement that we do is contributing what we misdisplace our culture and our stories by our marriage, and it's also by disconnecting ourselves from our culture and that story that is passed on to generation to generation, and lots of our families have moved. So to reflect on that, I'm just going to tell you about what my work is with water, in terms of what water means to me. So using a form of a mother or a woman to stand waste into the water, because that's the measure to our belief that related to our storytelling, to a shape of a human, that how we measure the water. You stand waste, drum the water, the sound goes louder. If you stand deep up to your chest, above your belly button, it reduces the sound. But once it goes up where your neck is, it's also you taking in water. So, I mean, the sound doesn't go that far. The sound becomes back to you. So the value of water is, like I said before, it's a measure in human life. The way we have a shower or bath in water. But the more transformed information is with the women's standing waste. So that's how we measure the water. And it's reflecting back to the tide. When you read the tide, low tide, high tide, mid tide, and all these are mentioned in our language clearly. Niruep, Linderuep, Metabros, all these things, it just reflect. So that's why it's more interesting for me working with you guys, because the way we use our language word reflect our language translation, it goes beyond. So that's where I put myself to be contributing the use the traditional knowledge by understanding the value of water is by using as a music or a performance, but it comes along with the big stories. So that's what, like I said, this maybe could be your first question that you asked. How it related to your terms of water, about your work in terms of water. So my work working with, preserving the nature along the coastal side and inland along the riverside, the riverbank, because we don't destroy this environment. They are the measure of the water, the sound that travels through the water, and protect the cleanliness of the water and the beauty of the water. So the creatures that under the water is treated by the environment that along the riverbank or the coastal side of the water. But if we start destroying this, it means we're pulling the water off the area where it used to be. So if we cut down trees along the riverbank, we're drying off the source of water. So we're just reducing, we're sinking back the water into our Mother Earth. We're not uplifting. Once we're planting more net environment along the riverbank, is we're putting that measure, we're uplifting the water, we're bringing back the water back to a level where we produce the moist into the environment and the sun. So that's why we say my work is working with using the ladies, how we sit in the water, how we stand waste in the water. I mean, we perform. There are different things we do to produce that sound. So that is my work, using a human to tell that story of the water.
That's really nice. Thank you, Sandy. Well, I was just thinking too, you were mentioning about the tides.
To relate it to your first question.
Yeah, thank you.
What do you think are the most critical sites?
You're breaking up.
I mean, talking about the tides.
Yeah, I'm interested in, because that's related to the moon, and to, you were talking about low tide, high tide. So I'm interested to know, this is not on the list of questions, but I'm interested to know about how maybe the phases of the moon might be significant in that.
Yes, like that's where it contributes from water to above the water, and above the surface up to the sky. I mean, yeah, above the sky or into the surface of the moon. That's where the full moon comes in, half moon comes in. The shape of the moon comes into our traditional name or language, and it's all related. And above that, it contributes with the weather pattern, the wind, the southeast, northeast, westerly wind. All these are contributing, and the moon is the shape of that to our language, and that's the pattern that the moon is playing with the tide. Yes.
That's so interesting. I did wonder that. I thought that there'd have to be a way that came together in the patterning of the.
Sure. Yes.
Yeah.
I think to those of you, I mean, you Tracy, and those of you who are listening to my presentation, like when I said the pattern is the pattern that plays everything. The shape of a tree, the tallest tree, the pattern of the lowest tree, the pattern of the above, like means the stars and the sky and the moon. All these are related to the water.
You're back.
To the water, sure.
That's.
I'm sorry. Come again?
I said we just lost your picture for a second.
Oh, yeah, I know. So yeah, so I'm gonna just
keep going.
Like if you throw some questions, I'll answer that later. But what do you think are the most critical issues related to the water? I think the issues are, like I said before, is as soon as we do respect our environment, then we do respect the water. The more we destroy our environment along the coastal side or the riverbank, or the source of water that it's left behind in a dam or a drain somewhere, it means something. A still water is alive, producing the same power as the moving water. It sits there, sits on a connection to the moving water under the air. So we don't damage all this water because they sit it for their choice where they used to be or used to. So I think the issues are destroying the environment along or around where the water source is. And the most important part of this is the structure, the structure of the cells of connection to water and the land. And it's the same thing that you turn over the color of your question 3. It destroys the connection of the stories between water and a place. Like I said before, there are only three main sources. There's a running stream, running river, could be a running river or a lake. and the seawater. So a running lake or a river is the same power as the water that sits still in a dam. And it's the same connection to the seawater. In any location they sit, or the way they locate it, is the same power they play to our Mother Earth, and that throws that life into a human and our environment and creatures. Your fourth question here would answer this way. Would like to talk about something else related to water. Water also read a message that sends a message to the nature or our creatures when they are misdisplaced, or it sends a message by the breeze, the wind, from a direction. It changes, and you can tell from the water, and it can tell you this wind is coming from the north, because it changes the swells or the tide and the wind. And that's what the water give us, the related message to the human or the nature. And you can tell the real nature that the leaves are going weak, or they're a bit sleepy, or what you can say, but just because of the process of the wind. Because in those days, when days that the winds have changed, we don't harvest, or we don't go fishing, or we don't go gardening, because we know the direction of the wind changes the pattern of the water. So that's why I said it is really important that water gives us a lot of measures in visibility in our eye, but also the understanding our eyes are connecting and the feeling. So how is your community being affected by climate change? Like I said, my thought about water, or the belief in water, it contributes lots of things. And that's when I said the climate change to our community, it's mostly on a coastal side or running stream or the rivers. We metal, and that's what we sink into the water, and it destroys the visibility and also the nature of water. And it's also reducing the level of water in the area. And this is what is visibility seen or seen with our eyes directly. And we do understand that Vanuatu has been really affected by the climate change, is by the sea rise. It's not only the sea rise, it's also over the low water in the river bank and the changes of the color of water. So all this contributing to our storytelling.